Alright guys, so we're back with, I think this is episode 7. So in the last video I showed you guys how to update the prefix in the database, but we didn't actually really make it so that it will be able to use the new updated prefix, because the prefix is still hard-coded and it's still interpreting the prefix from the slap.json file. So in this episode I'm going to show you guys how to pretty much fix that. So pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to load up all of the prefixes from the database and we're going to cache it. We're going to cache it, and then basically that should save everything for us. So I'll show you guys how to do that. So if you notice right over here inside the index.js file, this is a file that was created by Slappy, but we did modify it a little bit. You'll notice on line 22 over here that we are creating a property called prefix on the client object, and we're assigning the value config.prefix, which is this slappy.json imports, and we're assigning config.prefix to client.prefix. So this is hard-coded, okay? So instead what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and get rid of this. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to need to query the database for a guild config right over here. And we're going to go ahead and pretty much set every single guild config to the correct guild. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. We're going to basically query all the guild configs, and what we're going to do is we're going to map every single guild ID to the correct guild config, if that makes sense. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to first make sure that we get all of the guilds that the bot is in. So how do we actually get all the guilds that the bot is in? Well, we need to first make sure we log the bot in, because if the bot is not logged in, you won't be able to get any information at all. Any Discord data about the bot. And like for example, you won't be able to see what the bot's username is, you won't be able to see all the guilds the bot is in, etc. So once the bot is logged in, so on line 25, that's where this is happening, you can go to the next line, and if you type client.guilds, this will give you a collection, or this will give you the manager, the guild manager. And if you type .cache, this will give you all of the guilds that the bot is in. Okay? So from here, what we can do is we can actually just iterate through this collection using for each. And pretty much what we can do from here is we can loop through each guild. And let me just get the key. Okay, we can loop through each guild, and all we need to do is just set all of the prefixes to the correct guild config schema. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky. The reason why is because we are going to need to perform an asynchronous operation by fetching the prefix. We're going to fetch the prefix from the database, and we're going to need to assign that prefix inside the map that we're going to create. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit tricky. So ideally we can't really use well, actually we could use for each, but the problem is that it's not really going to work for asynchronous operations. So instead what I'll do actually is I'll probably end up changing this to an array, and we're going to use a for. We're gonna get an array of all of these values. So I'm just gonna do this real quick. Const guilds equals. Okay, and let me just console log there real quick. So give me 1 second. So let's just wait for this. Okay, so you're gonna see that right over here we have an array, and it's an array of guilds. Okay, so that's exactly what we want. So now I can pretty much do for const guild of guilds. Now if I console log the guild.id, you'll see right over here that it's just going to log the guild ID. Okay, so the bot logs in, and then the guild ID is logged. Just wait for it. So yes, we can't really use .for each, because if you try to use .for each, it's going to you basically won't be able to use asynchronous operations inside .for each, because .for each is blocking. Now, I'm not too sure if it would be too much of a problem though, if because you don't really need to worry so much about each guild prefix being set in a certain order. They can all happen they can all happen in a randomized order. It doesn't really matter. But ideally, it'd be better if we use for const guild of guilds, so that way we can actually write cleaner code. So what I want to do is I'm going to basically do const guild config db equals await, and we're going to go ahead and fetch the guild config, and we're going to need to import that. So let's do that real quick. Const guild config equals require schema's guild config schema. We're going to do find one, and we're going to need to get the guild ID. So let me do that real quick. Const guild ID equals guild.id. Okay, and yeah, so what we're going to do here is we're simply just going to go ahead and do this. So let's do if guild config db. So if it's found, then what we'll do is we will set the guild ID in a map to the actual guild config that was found. So what we're going to do is we're going to do client.configs equals new map. So what we're doing here is we're creating a new map of configurations. So client.configs is going to be a property that's going to be a map of all guild IDs, and it maps to the guild config. Okay, so hopefully you guys are starting to understand, or maybe you already understand already, but for those who are a little bit weirded out, you guys can kind of see what's going on. Okay, so don't worry, I'm gonna re-explain everything, so I know it can be a little bit tricky. So pretty much, once we find the guild config, if it's found in the database, we're gonna go ahead and do client.configs.set. Okay, and we're gonna go ahead and set the guild ID to the guild config db, which is the model, or not, I shouldn't say model, the document that was found. Okay, so if it's not found, then we just simply, I'm just gonna do a log not found. I'm not going to really do anything for the else, but I just want to leave this here just for development purposes and logging purposes. And I'm just gonna leave a log over here. Set config. Okay, and you're gonna see that it's gonna say set config. There we go. So now we actually have the configuration saved. You can think of it as it's pretty much cached. So the reason why we're doing this, and the reason why we're doing it when the bot first starts up, is because we pretty much don't even need to actually we don't need to worry about constantly fetching it from the database over and over and over again. We can actually just load all of it when the bot first logs in, and we can just reference the guild config document locally because it's saved inside this client.configs map, and then we can use that. So we don't have to make a database query every single time, which can take up some time, and it could slow down your bot just a little bit. It depends on how many users are using it, but yeah. Okay, so are we done yet? No, we're not done yet. Okay, but I want you guys to understand what's going on right now. So let me go ahead and walk you guys through it. So what we're doing right now is we're creating a map on client.configs. So this is going to store every single guild config from the database, and it's going to be mapped by the guild ID. Okay, so if, let's say for example, if our bot is in 3 guilds, for each guild we're going to check to see if the guild has a guild config, and if it does, what we're going to do is we're going to set the guild ID of that guild to its corresponding guild config that's in the database. And that's what we're doing over here from line 28 to 38. So on line 28, as I mentioned in the video, this video like a couple minutes ago, we can't really use for each because for each doesn't work with asynchronous operations. So what I'm doing here is I'm converting the collection to an array. Okay, and then what we're doing from there is we basically now have an array of all the guilds instead of a collection or map, and we're looping through the guilds, And for each guild, we're going to get the guild ID and we're going to search the database for a guild config based off of that guild ID. If it's found, we're going to set the client configs map. We're going to set the guild ID mapped to the guild config. And if it's not found, we're just going to not do anything, where we're just going to log it. So hopefully this all makes sense. So cool. So now let me go ahead and just console log client.configs real quick. And you're going to see that we have this object called map, and it has the guild ID and then maps to an object. And this object is the document from the database. You can see the guild ID, the prefix. Okay, so what do we have to do next? Well, we need to actually make sure that we are interpreting the prefix from the actual client.configs collection. That's the whole point of this. So instead of going inside our message event and constantly fetching the database for the correct prefix every single time, what we're doing is we're saving it locally. So instead of having to fetch a database, which like I said can take up some time, we are referencing, or I shouldn't say referencing, we are fetching locally. We're fetching it in memory, okay? We're fetching the prefix in memory, so it's a lot faster than using the database. Now, if you wanted to, let's say, I think if you want to scale this, and let's say if your bot is in like 1,000, 2,000 guilds, you might want to consider using maybe something like Redis, for example. But I'm sure there's obviously another more optimized way, but Redis would also be a good way to save your guild configs. Okay, but what's next is we need to go inside the message event, because this is where we are checking to see if the message begins with the correct prefix. That's pretty much how the command handler usually works. You are checking to see if the message starts with the prefix, and if it does, then it's a command, and if it doesn't, then it's not a command. We're just going to ignore it. Okay, well, I should rephrase that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a command, because we're also still checking to see if the command is actually correct, like if the actual command is a real command. If it's not, it doesn't do anything. Okay, but on this line 10, you can see that it says message.constant that starts with client.prefix. We're going to go ahead and get rid of this, and all we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do const prefix equals client.configs dot get message.guild.id. Okay, and ideally, actually, there's actually also going to be another problem too, because if you think about this, basically no commands will be able to work if the user does not have a document, or if the bot does not have a document for that guild. So now that I think about that, it actually kind of makes sense. So what we'll do to fix this is we will pretty much let's see, a way to fix this. Well, there's actually a couple ways you can fix this. You can make it so that when the bot joins the guild, it will create a schema immediately, and that would pretty much just that can be done easily by using the I think it's the guild add command, or not the guild add command, a guild add event. But in this situation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually I'm going to do this. I'm going to cheat a little bit. So if it's found, if it's found, then we will go ahead and set the guild ID with the guild config. But if it's not found, then what I'll do instead is I'm going to go ahead and do client.configs.set guild ID. And I'm just going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and just do this. I'll do this just for now, but in the next videos I will fix this and I'll show you guys a better way to do it. Okay, so the reason, like I said, the problem here is that if the bot joins a server, it's not going to have a document in the database by default, but we can write the code to do that. But since there's no document in the database, that means none of the commands will work, because the prefix will not even be recognized, because there's not a prefix set up yet, because there's no guild config set up. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm basically just cheating a little bit. I'm basically manually setting the guild ID to an object that has the guild ID, and then the prefix set to question mark. Okay, and so that will just ensure that currently this bot will work regardless. And from here, we can get the actual prefix. So this will actually log the config, but what I want to do instead is I'm going to actually destructure this. Okay, so start with prefix. You could also use an OR condition if you want. Like you can do if it starts with prefix or messenger.content starts with. You can also do this, but like I said, the best thing to do would be using the guild add event, and I'll do that in the next couple videos. So let's go ahead and test this out. Let's make sure that it works. Okay, so let's just say, for example, if I try to, so right now if I go into my server and if I try to use set prefix, you're gonna see that let's see, so it logs $. Okay, that's the correct prefix. You'll notice that so this over here, I haven't refreshed this yet, so that's why it hasn't been updated, but let me go ahead and use this command again. So right now you can see that the prefix is $. We just haven't refreshed it. I just refreshed it, and that's why it looked like it updated, but didn't really update it. If I refresh, you can see that it didn't actually change. That's because the prefix is $, and now it's actually interpreting it from the actual database. Let's see what's going on here. We actually got an error. So it's saying cannot be properly length of undefined. So let's see what's going on here. What's going on? Message event line number 14. Oh, whoops. Sorry about that. Forgot to change this. Yes, that's right. It's using client.prefix, and client.prefix is not a property anymore. We have to do prefix.length. Okay. So let's fix this again. So let's just refresh our database. So you can see that it's $. Now if I do this, okay, so there's no error, but you can see it got updated. There you go. So now if I try to use the same command again with the previous prefix, it's not going to work. Okay. Wait, what just happened? Wait, why was? Oh, okay. So the reason why it actually worked is because we actually haven't updated the cache locally. So you notice how we updated the prefix to %, but it was still able to change it with $. Because before, when we started the bot, it was a $, then we changed it to a %. Okay, so it wasn't actually reading the updated value from the database. It's still using the same old value from the cache, from the memory, from the client.configs. So we need to actually write the code and fix that. And it's actually fairly simple. So inside the set prefix command, all we literally need to do is right after we update the guild prefix, we can just take this guild config db and we can pretty much just do client.configs.set guild id guild config db, and this is where the new true property inside the third parameter comes in handy, because if we didn't have this, this would give us the old document without anything being updated. If we pass this in, it'll give us the updated value, so we don't need to do an extra find one. We can just pass in this value over here, and that will pretty much update the client.configs locally. So hopefully you guys caught that, because what just happened was not supposed to, well, it was working as the way it was implemented, but that's not ideally the behavior we want, because it was still using the old prefix, and that should not happen. The moment we update the prefix, it should be able to use the updated prefix. It wasn't doing that because it wasn't reading it from the database. It was reading it from the client.configs. But don't worry, this should fix it. So right now our prefix is exclamation mark. So if I try to use set prefix, it should not work. Okay. So if I do set prefix, let's do ampersand. You're gonna see that the map now has it set to ampersand. Okay, now let me copy that. If I refresh the database, you're gonna see it's ampersand. If I try to use the previous prefix, and let's change it to a $, now it does not work. Okay, the reason why is because we have updated the cache, the client.configs property. So now, since it's updated, we can use ampersand. Where is my ampersand? Ampersand set prefix. Let's change it to $, and you see that it just got updated locally. I shouldn't say locally, I should say in memory. Okay, and now it's $, and now if I do something like setup, okay, there we go. Set prefix. Let's change it to caret symbol. Setup. There we go. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this whole video. I know it was a bit lengthy, so I do kind of apologize, but there was really a lot of stuff that we needed to cover. So hopefully this video was very informative and you understand how to implement this. In the next video, I'm going to go ahead and fix up some of the logic that we implemented, because instead of manually doing this, what we're going to do is we're going to make it so when the bot joins, it's just going to automatically create the guild config schema for us. So we likely don't even need the setup command, but we will have it just in case. And that's going to pretty much ease up a lot of things, so we don't have to worry about manually setting this, which is not ideal. But yeah, so that's going to be pretty much it for this video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace out.